It's summertime and it's time for camp. Marriage Camp from the Stupendous Marriage Show.
Listen up, campers!
Well, hello there. Welcome to the Stupendous Marriage Show. I am Stu Gray, and this is Marriage Camp. You'll notice that Lisa isn't here. She actually is in the hospital with a family member who is not doing well, so we'd appreciate your prayers. All summer long for Marriage Camp, we have been giving you different tips, tricks, and tools for your marriage, and we are getting back to our regular show, which is where we answer emails from you. If one of our Marriage Camp sessions has sparked a question, or there's something just burning in your relationship that you would like to ask, get it off your chest, email us on air at stupendousmarriage.com, and we may answer your email on a future Stupendous Marriage Show in the fall when we get back to our normal format of the show. So today, our topic falls under the big umbrella of mindset. Our mindset badge is where we're kind of falling today, but the outworkings of our topic kind of fall in the communication and teamwork areas. So it's kind of 3 for 1 today, and I want to talk about expectations and resentments. A lot of times, expectations cause problems in our marriage. Being in recovery for several years now, there's a phrase that's passed around in recovery circles that sounds something like this: expectations are reserved resentments. And resentment is pretty much a feeling of indignant displeasure or persistent ill will at something regarded as wrong or an insult or injury. Pretty much, if you want to sum it up in a word, it's anger. Expectations, when they aren't met, can produce anger. And that's not a good place to be for our marriage. The book of the Bible that I go to consistently for how faith in action is supposed to look and act is the book of James. And there's some verses in James 4 that I think are really beneficial to talking about expectations and letting them go. And it's verses chapter 4, 13 through about 16. And it sounds like this: "You who say, 'Today or tomorrow we're going to a certain town and we'll stay there a year. We will do business there and make a profit.' How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while, then it's gone. What you ought to say is, 'If the Lord wants us to, we'll live and do this or that.' Otherwise, you're boasting about your own pretentious plans, and all such boasting is evil." So those verses are talking about business and where you're going and what you're doing, but it's all about expectations. Well, I expect my business is going to do well. I expect I'm going to be living here or there, with no consideration of anything else but your own wants or desires. And bringing it back to our marriage, our own wants or desires don't always match up with the desires and wants of our spouse. A lot of times that's where we get conflict, when we have expectations that don't match up with our spouse. So how do you get your expectations more on the same page so you're not constantly at each other and missing each other's expectations or desires? I think you have to be two good forgivers. Ruth Bell Graham said, "A happy marriage is the union of two good forgivers." You have to be willing to give forgiveness, and you have to be willing to ask for forgiveness. A lot of times when our expectations don't match up, it causes problems, and you have to go, "Oh, I missed that. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand that's what you wanted." Or, "Oh, please forgive me. I really did not know that that's what you wanted to do, and I totally went over here." So thinking about forgiveness, being a good forgiver, and being someone who asks for forgiveness, humbling yourself enough to ask for forgiveness. Another thing to help with expectations is to hold on to things loosely. Those verses in James talked about, well, if the Lord wants us to, we'll do this and we'll do that. Being a conduit of the things that you want. I always think of holding things in my hands loosely. Instead of grabbing hold and pulling them to myself, I turn my palms up and it's like, well, God, you're going to do this or you're going to do that. And it's the same in my marriage. Well, we could do this, we could do that. I kind of offer it to Lisa and say, well, here's what we could do. And what do you think? It doesn't always work. A lot of times I have my own agenda, my own thoughts, my own desires. And ideally, that's what I would do all the time. But it doesn't always work that way. So remembering to be a good forgiver, remembering to forgive, holding things loosely. You've got to talk about what you're thinking. You've got to talk about your expectations, the things you have going on in your head. We have this phrase, this silly phrase that helps us remember this in our marriage, and it's simply this: what's your video for today? We've talked about it on the show several times before. What is your video in your head that you have going on that you're expecting to happen? And a lot of times, our videos don't match up. I have X, Y, Z that I want to do, and she has A, B, C, D, E that she wants to do. And they're nowhere near each other. So holding things loosely, being willing to forgive, ask for forgiveness, and then talking about your stuff together and working it out, coming to a compromise. Well, we can do A, we can do Z, we can maybe work in D and E, and maybe a W, something completely different. You're working these things together as a couple. And that's really where holding things loosely comes in and is beneficial. You've got something going on in your head, your videotape that you have your expectation about, but being willing to change that up and work together towards the common goal. Here's what happens if you don't work on your expectations. It leads to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that John Gottman talks about. And those are contempt, stonewalling, defensiveness, and criticism. When you hold on to an expectation and your expectation isn't met, that phrase comes back. Expectations are reserved resentments. That resentment builds up. That anger boils up in you. And all of a sudden, you're stonewalling, which means you just walk away from conversations. You get angry and you don't necessarily blow up, but you just eject out of the conversation. Not good for your marriage because you think you've been slighted because they didn't meet your expectation. Or you get contemptuous. You start rolling your eyes more, or you think of yourself more holy than thou because they can't read your mind because you haven't talked about your expectations for the day, and you're rolling your eyes and you get huffy, or you poke at them and jab at them with your words. And we talked about our words in a previous marriage camp session. We know that that's not good. So contempt isn't good. You get defensive when they want to do something else. They have their expectation. You've got your expectation. You're like, no, we're not going to do that. And you're defending. That doesn't work. And then a lot of times it can lead to criticism of your spouse. Well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and you've always done it this way, or you never do what we want to do. All of those things are horrible for our marriage. So we have to watch this expectation thing like a hawk. I think it leads to a problem area if you aren't humble, if you don't hold your expectations loosely, if you don't talk about them with your spouse honestly. We don't want to jump on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and go to a negative place in our marriage. So that's our marriage session for today. Expectations are reserved resentments. Make sure you're talking about your expectations with your spouse before they happen. And that phrase that we use, that silly phrase, what's your video look like for today, is super helpful. Again, we would love to get your emails for a future Stupendous Marriage show on air at stupendousmarriage.com. Please do pray for Lisa as she's bouncing back and forth from the hospital. It's been a crazy several days. We appreciate you. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.